All right, let's get right into this explainer. We are at a truly fascinating inflection point right now where we're seeing AI definitively move out of the laboratory and crash headfirst into the harsh, demanding realities of enterprise economics and global politics. Based on the latest digest from TechReader, it is safe to say the adolescent phase of generative AI is officially behind us. To map out exactly what this maturation looks like, we're going to hit 4 quick stops today. First, the real work AI benchmark. Then, the billion-dollar deployment. Third, the global governance collision. And finally, a look at the expanding AI ecosystem. Starting off with Section 1, the real work AI benchmark. And we're kicking this off with a massive breakthrough from Fable 5 that honestly totally changes the game on how we measure AI competency out in the real world. So the Center for AI Safety, along with Scale AI Labs, just dropped some new numbers. Fable 5 pulled off a 16.1% on the CAIS Remote Labor Index. Now, I know 16% doesn't sound like a knockout at first glance, but context is everything here. That score actually leads all publicly available models. And we're not talking about simple textbook quizzes. This is based on 240 actual, real-world remote projects spanning 23 different professional domains. This whole thing perfectly captures a massive pivot in the industry right now. We used to obsess over academic evals, basically asking, hey, can this AI pass a synthetic standardized test? But now, the new standard is real work acceptability. It asks a much harder, much more practical question. Would a client actually open their wallet and pay for this output as a real deliverable? Fable 5 isn't just passing coding tests, it's literally crossing that threshold into professional acceptance. But, yeah, there's always a catch, right? Developers are reporting these wildly capable agentic sessions, where the AI is basically running on its own, doing multi-step tasks, like pumping out top-tier HTML5 canvas physics demos. It's amazing. The catch is that running these agentic workflows with Fable 5 costs roughly 6 times more than just using Opus 4.8. And let's be real, you can't just wave that off as normal early adopter friction. Software engineer Aaron Rose really hit the nail on the head here. He pointed out that while Fable 5 is clearly leading the pack in capability today, this brutal 6x procurement math is absolutely going to put enterprise buyers to the test going into Q3. The brains are there for sure, but can a business actually afford to deploy it at a massive scale? That is a huge open question. Which brings us to Section 2, the billion-dollar deployment. Because figuring out how enterprises actually make these brilliant but super expensive models work for their bottom line is the next big hurdle. Enter Amazon Web Services with a massive structural pivot. AWS just threw down a staggering $1 billion to build out what they're calling a Forward Deployed Engineering, or FDE, organization. And look, this isn't just a flashy marketing push. It is a ground-up shift in how cloud services are actually delivered. Basically, this is AWS saying the quiet part out loud. If we look back, so many enterprise generative AI pilots just stalled out or failed to move the needle because the integration and governance complexity was just overwhelming. AWS realized that just selling raw compute and tossing over an API key, that strategy is pretty much dead in the water for winning the enterprise market. So to fix the industry's absolute biggest deployment bottleneck, AWS is internalizing that integration layer. Their playbook has 3 steps. First, this FDE strike force physically embeds directly inside the client's operations. Second, they use an agent-first approach to squash deployment timelines from agonizing months down to mere days. And the kicker, step 3, they aim to leave the customer completely self-sufficient. No endless consulting fees. It's a brute force, brilliant way to drag AI out of pilot purgatory and actually get it into production. All right, moving on to Section 3, the global governance collision. Because while the engineers are fighting the deployment battle, international policymakers are gearing up for a totally different kind of bottleneck on the global stage. The UN has officially entered the chat. Ahead of the inaugural global dialogue in Geneva, the UN Secretary-General's office introduced a 40-member panel, co-chaired by AI pioneer Yoshua Bengio and journalist Maria Ressa. And they did not sugarcoat things. They issued a really stark warning about the rapidly closing window we have to coordinate rules. If we don't figure this out, we risk worsening global inequality, spreading deception, and blowing the digital divide wide open. And wow, does this set up a massive geopolitical friction point? We're literally watching two completely incompatible governance models collide in real time. On one side, you have the US taking a very sharp national security first approach, treating frontier AI almost like classified digital weapons, complete with rapid export controls. Right across from that, you have the UN's approach, which is trying to build a broad, multilateral, science-based framework designed specifically to mitigate global inequality. Put yourself in the shoes of a developer or an enterprise lab right now. Navigating this fractured, contradictory regulatory maze is quickly becoming way harder than writing the actual code. The Geneva Dialogue is going to be the ultimate litmus test of whether international regulatory fragmentation is going to accelerate or if shared oversight is actually a thing we can pull off. But hey, while the politicians argue, the tech keeps accelerating. Which leads us to Section 4. The expanding AI ecosystem. Let's wrap up with a rapid-fire look at just how fast the broader space moved this week. Because the foundational tech, it is absolutely not slowing down for a second. The pace of productization just this week alone has been insane. Anthropic rolled out Claude Code 2.1918, which now features these wild background agents that can auto-commit. Meanwhile, OpenAI has their GPT 5.6 models, Sol, Terra, and Luna, sitting in a government-gated preview. Over at Google, they're pushing tighter app integration with their Gemini Spark macOS beta and the OmniFlash API. And xAI, they just dropped a no-code voice agent builder for creating phone agents that costs literally 5 cents a minute. The sheer velocity across the board is breathtaking. And fueling all that software is an absolute tsunami of cash and physical infrastructure. Together, AI just scooped up $800 million. Abu Dhabi's MGX raised a mind-bending $49 billion for a new AI fund. Yes, that is $49 billion with a B. 12 Labs grabbed $100 million for AI video search. ByteDance is dropping $39 billion on a massive data center project in Brazil, and Meta stock popped 9% just by signaling they might pivot to sell off their excess AI compute capacity. The physical footprint of this tech is expanding globally at an immense scale. So what's the big takeaway you need from this explainer today? It's that AI has officially grown up. The adolescent, purely academic phase is definitively over. The tech works, we know it passes the real-work acceptability test, but the new frontlines aren't just about who has the smartest model anymore. The real battles today are fighting the brutal procurement math, cutting through enterprise deployment friction, and trying to survive complex geopolitical guardrails. I want to leave you with something to really chew on. As these models get relentlessly smarter, and as the infrastructure built out eats up billions upon billions of dollars, is it actually possible for our corporate budgets, let alone our global institutions, to keep up with the blinding speed of this software deployment? Thank you for walking through this structured look at the current AI landscape with me.